Nat Nat Dancer asks, if you could be any character in the Disney parks, who would it be? Thanks and have a magical day. That's easy. I would be Push because Push is the coolest. Hi everybody and welcome to the Disney Q&A. This is the series in which you ask me all sorts of questions about Disney, the parks, the movies, the history, and I try to give you answers to the best of my abilities. We've got a bunch of great questions today, and yes, of course, I know Push isn't in the parks anymore, but if I had to pick any character, I'd bring back Push. We've got some great questions, so let's just dive right in. Our first question comes from Susan Bismack, who asks, hey, do you think the mythology land is coming to Animal Kingdom because Disney has been adding dragons and other strange creatures to signs in its parks? Maybe one day, but not anytime soon. And by anytime soon, I'd say like 10 to 15 years would be my guess. They've got Pandora, Avatar Land. Maybe that's what some of what you're seeing is. Of course, Animal Kingdom has a history where it was originally going to have a land all about mythological creatures like dragons and such. Unfortunately, due to a lot of reasons, mainly being budgetary and the company and its state of money, they ended up pushing that back and never ended up happening. And then we ended up getting Pandora. So will we ever see it? I mean, I think it's certainly possible. I think the idea that they're adding a whole new land to Disneyland is crazy to me, and we'll talk about that later. But the fact shows that, like, decades later, they could definitely change up the park. So we might see it one day, just, not anytime soon. I wouldn't count on any dragon rides coming up. Our next question comes from Daniel Burns, who's got two questions. First one, what do you think of the changes to annual passes at Disney World and Disneyland? Second question, the hotels at Disney World are nearly full all year round, and I'm surprised that they didn't announce any new ones at D23. What new hotel would you put in the Animal Kingdom Resort area since it has the least hotels? So to answer your second question first, because I think it's the easier one, I actually wouldn't put any in the Animal Kingdom area. I think you're approaching it in a very fair way, which is to say, well, which one has the least hotels? Where can we add more? But I don't think that's how they should do it, and I don't think that's how they're going to do it. I think the real question is, which park's the most popular, and are there enough hotels around that park? And my guess would be that's the Magic Kingdom, and my other guess would be maybe not enough, so I would probably put another hotel around there. I think it would be cool to put a hotel on the monorail loop over by the Seven Seas Lagoon. I think that'd be sort of interesting, just because we haven't seen a big change there yet. I mean, obviously those hotels get upgraded, and a lot of them are getting like, I think DVC suites and things like that, but I think it'd be sweet to get a whole brand new hotel over there. Maybe one a little more themed. They were going to do like a Persian themed resort, maybe something like that. As for your first question, changes to annual Disney World passes and Disneyland passes. I think obviously the biggest change is that the price is rising. Every year it keeps going up and up and up, and people get angrier and angrier, and there's always, every year, like clockwork, a whole slew of articles about how it's costing X amount more to go to Disney, and certainly nobody wants to pay more. But I think it's not an unfair thing for them to do. It's interesting. There was like an article in the LA Times that sort of broke down some of the possible and probable reasons for these price raises. And I think a lot of them make sense. They are a business first and foremost. They're trying to make money. But I think they more than ever in today's age, we have so much data, and especially you look at Disney World with the Magic Bands, there's even more data, and with that data, they can make decisions that I think from our perspective seem crazy and wild, but from their end, when they can see all the numbers, go, no, this actually makes a lot of sense. Some of the things that the article mentioned that I thought were very interesting is think about spending, right? This typical person who has an annual pass is going there often, which means they're probably locals. Not always the case, but I bet the data would show that most of them are locals. And when you're local, that means you're less likely to stay on property at a hotel, which is where they make a lot of their money. You're less likely probably to buy souvenirs, or to maybe, a lot of those locals who come are spending less on food there. Maybe they're bringing their own food. And so, this could be a way to offset the lack of spending on that end versus a family who comes down every X so often, every few months or few years. I think there's definitely some reasoning behind trying to make the parks less crowded. If you raise the prices, less people are going to get the tickets and less people are going to be there. I know it's crazy to think, why would a company want less people going to their parks? But they have to keep it manageable. They don't want anybody getting angry, and especially for a company like Disney where the guest experience is just so important. The last thing they want is a park that's constantly overcrowded to the point where it just takes away from that experience. And so, you'd have to look at ways to thin out those crowds, and I think raising the prices is one way to do that. And then, it just comes to they have to pay for everything they're doing over there. Yeah, we have Star Wars Land coming to Disneyland and Disney World. We have Toy Story Land. We have Pandora. We have all of these things getting built, and that money's got to come from somewhere. And that's why you see ticket prices go up all the time. And I think the question pops up every once in a while as to how high is too high? And honestly, I'm not an annual pass holder. I don't go that often, so I can't answer to that. All I know is the regular tickets are at a price where I still feel like it's worth every dollar. And so I guess they haven't hit my limit, but I'm a hardcore Disney fan. So, I'm sure my limit's going to be a lot higher than the average family out there. Our next question comes from Funny Kid 3100, who says, do you think Disney World should add a new thrill ride to any of its parks? A lot of coaster enthusiasts are complaining about the lack of thrill rides at Disney parks and rather go to more thrilling parks than Disney. What do you think of this? Sure, I'm not opposed to more thrill rides. I think Disney has a very interesting corner on that theme park market where, yeah, they're not the thrill ride capital by any stretch, but look at how popular they are, and they're still growing, and the attendance is still unmatched. And I would just say that I'm totally open to more thrill rides. I'd love to see a Tron coaster here in the United States. I wouldn't mind a coaster or some sort of thrill ride in Epcot to sort of add some balance. But if they didn't, I think it would still be fine. And I would argue that maybe Disney's not a place for coaster enthusiasts. Maybe that's just not what Disney's trying to be. And maybe so, to say should they or do they need to add this? I think the answer as far as need is they definitely don't need to. They're doing fine without them. I think they innovate and get people's attention in other ways. And so I think they need to constantly innovate. If at the time that means a new coaster, then sure. But otherwise, I think they can pass on that. That's something they'll never match up to something like a Six Flags that focuses mostly on coasters. Think about how many roller coasters are in your average Six Flags or something like that. They're never going to reach that. So why should they try to? They should just be themselves, not try and be another park. Our next question comes from JKRTA. J.K. Rowling reads that article? I don't know. I was wondering if you could help me with a planned trip I have been wanting to do summer next year. I was wanting to know how much you saved up to go to Florida and going to Disney. Did you drive down there? Me and some friends were planning to drive there as well. If you don't remember how much you spent there, how much you came back with, I think the question is essentially, give me an idea of how much money I should save for a Disney trip. They're also planning to go to Universal. So this is an interesting topic. I think it's a topic that applies to anybody who goes to Disney, right? Because nobody's going for a completely free ride. And so money matters. But I don't think giving you some figures is the right way to go about it, because the thing is, you're traveling, and when you're traveling, so many variables come into play that if I were to give you a number, it probably wouldn't be helpful, because I don't know where you're flying from. Are you flying from New York? If you're flying from New York, then yeah, I could probably throw some numbers your way. But if you want to drive, and driving's a totally different thing. I've never really driven to Disney World just because time was always an issue. How much are you going to spend there? It depends. Where are you staying? Are you doing park hopper? Or how many days are you going to the parks versus doing other things? Where are you eating? There's so much to do. I think the biggest thing I can suggest is you just need to plan the trip as if it's going to happen. Plan it as if you have unlimited funds, plan it as if you have a realistic amount of funds, and plan it as if you're scraping together money. And find a balance that works for you, because that's the thing. You can cut corners in certain areas of a Disney trip to add to others, and that's going to depend highly on what you prefer in a Disney experience. I'm the kind of person who finds park hopping to be vital. I know some people, they don't need it. So that's an extra cost to the ticket that I need to pull from somewhere else. And I've said many times in my videos that food for me at Disney is fuel more than anything else. I don't need fancy dinners. So if that means cutting out 1 or 2 sit-down meals to afford to put a park hopper option on my trip, then I'm totally going to do that. And that's the sort of decision that you want to make when you're planning ahead. You know, some people, the hotel is just a place for them to sleep at night between going to the parks. And for other people, it's a place where they're going to spend time and relax. And so for them, they might want to put more money into where they're sleeping. Other people, you might want to go with the values because, hey, you just need a place to sleep. And so that's something you need to keep in mind. You know, you're driving, so that's something you also need a budget. It's tough. And I've planned trips with groups, and I can tell you it's not easy because, you know, if one person drops off, all of a sudden the cost of a lot of things changes, and that could affect everything else. There's a whole ripple effect. So, I mean, I wish I had numbers I can throw your way. All I can say is plan early and plan multiple times. And I think that's part of the fun of it. You know, Christine and I, we're hardcore Disney fans, and no joke, like a week or 2 after coming back from Disney, we'll be pricing out and like planning the next Disney trip. Not because we're going to book it right then, but because we want to know, and it helps us stay informed. And you know, the other thing that I should throw in there is, when are you going? What time of year? Because prices are different depending on the time of year. You want to go in the summer, prices are probably going to be a little bit higher because it's the busy season. So that's something to keep in mind as well. I wish I had more like tangible like advice I could throw out there for people planning, where it's like, oh, you know, go to this website and you'll save $50. But really, it's just a matter of planning, weighing the value of all the elements of a Disney trip to your preferences, and then finding what's right for your wallet, and then saving. You know, that's the hard part. And then finally this week, I thought this was an interesting one and maybe a controversial one to bring up. But Zatstar says, what do you think about the Rivers of America and Railroad being rerouted to fit in Star Wars Land? I think it's fine. The part that they are shortening had very few views anyway, but I think this opens an interesting conversation. Disneyland is landlocked. If they want to add more stuff, they're going to have to remove something. But almost everything at Disneyland is considered classic or too good to go. What can Disney do moving forward to keep Disneyland fresh, but not make all Disney fans get out their pitchforks? And if we know anything, it's that Disney fans have pitchforks. Oh my gosh, just drop the mention of Maelstrom closing, and people are going to start rolling their eyes. I thought this was an interesting question because it's one where I think I might stand in the minority. I do think a lot of Disney rides, Disneyland and Magic Kingdom and Disney World, are considered classic, too good to go. And whenever something closes at Disney, regardless of whether it's the Maelstrom or just recently Captain EO, I think was announced that it was closing, you see far more people angry, upset, and sad than people who are excited for what's to come. And I think part of that is they know what's leaving. They have memories of what's leaving. They have nostalgia. And for what's to come, they don't have anything. There's no memories there. There's nothing there to give them the value that says, I'm excited for this. And while people may be excited for Star Wars Land, or they may be excited for Toy Story Land, if you tell them, well, hey, we're closing the backlot tour, all of a sudden you see a lot of sad faces because they have those memories. And that's a bummer. But I have a very, I would say, I have a very forward-facing view of Disney. I am a big believer in Walt's idea that these parks should always be evolving. They should always be changing. And so I'm for like virtually anything closing. I think there are very few rides at the parks that I think are too sacred to get rid of. And so my answer to your question would essentially be, let them get out their pitchforks, announce it. You know, you got to remember, we are the hardcore fans who go to these parks a lot and talk about them a lot, but that doesn't make us the majority. In fact, we are probably the vast minority when it comes to them people who are coming to these parks. And so Disney has to keep those people in mind first, because there are more of them. They're just more average park goers. The type of people who would ride the Maelstrom and go, what is this cheesy junk? Sorry, I know if you're a fan, that probably sounded like blasphemous, but the Maelstrom was like a cheesy old ride, and that had to go. And I think they just have to accept that they're going to anger some of the hardcore fans whenever something closes. And I would ask this question in return. When it comes to the Maelstrom, when it comes to closing, you know, or rerouting the railroads, or closing Captain EO, how many super fans get so upset that they stop going to Disney? I don't know an exact number, and I don't think we'll ever get an exact number, but my guess is that number is close to 0. And I think Disney knows that. And I think Disney knows that they can anger Disney fans because they'll get over it. they'll move on. Something new will be there. Disney Imagineering does fantastic jobs with what they build, and, you know, they'll have new memories to build. And so, you know, I'm all for it. Tear it down, put something new up. Nothing is too sacred to change. I feel like that goes against the entire spirit of these theme parks and what Walt wanted to build when he built Disneyland. Anyway, I want to thank you all for the fantastic questions. They've been great this week. Please continue to throw them my way. I love doing these. You can let me know on Twitter. I'm at Rob Plays. You can leave them here in the comments below. They're a blast. Also, as you might have noticed, the channel's been undergoing some changes. I'm introducing more regular video game stuff, so feel free to check that out if you're interested in playing video games. Have a fantastic week. Whatever you're doing, make the most of it because it makes it that much better. And I hope to see you all next time for the next Disney Q&A. Bye, everybody.